Welcome back to episode 2 of Talking with Jollip. I am Joey from Jollip Lures, and we're here in Jollip HQ, and we are absolutely stoked that everyone loved our ideas moving forward from episode 1. If you haven't already seen that, go and check it out. A bit of an overview of what's the plan for the year and jumping into more of this podcast style videos. Guys, we have an absolute treat for you guys. While this is only episode 2, I've brought in the big guns. I have sat down with the one and only Matt Fraser from Barambah Lures, and let me tell you, this chat is unbelievable. We sat down and we chat for about an hour, 50 minutes or so. It is unreal. It's raw. There's a lot of honesty in there from Matt's behalf, for what he's been through with production lures, back to timber lures, back to production lures. Nothing really was off cards with Matt. We had an absolutely cracking chat, but I'm not going to tell you all about it. I'm going to drop it in right here, guys. Grab your Jollip stubby cooler, crack a beer, and sit back and enjoy. Alrighty guys, here we are with the man himself, Matt Fraser from Barambah Lures. Thanks for joining us today, mate.
No worries, mate. Thanks for coming.
Mate, I was just having a bit of a chat off camera. This is a new sort of format for us, this podcast style moving forward, and you're going to be the first cab off the rank, mate. You're the guinea pig. So,
mate, I'm honoured to be part of it. Thank you. Thanks.
No, not a problem. So basically, like I've mentioned to the viewers before, we're just going to delve into a bit of your life, bit of your lure making, just all any of experiences basically, why you like to make timber lures and what makes timber lures so special. So I guess let's kick it off with, where did it all start for you, mate? Yeah,
it started for me, mate, back when I was reading Fishing Magazine as a teenager. So I just saw articles of lure making articles by Vic McChrystal on Norm Edwards and Eric Moller and Peter Newell.
Yep.
And then I just started carving lures, and there's actually an article where like make your own lure out of the magazine. And this is one of the lures I made back when I was
hold him up there, mate. Give the viewers a
13 or 14 years old.
Yeah, so wow. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
That's the first cray, and it was just carved and with a knife. That's
actually quite cool, guys. So that's just to prove that Matt's with his later crays is not knocking off crays. That is pretty cool. It's one of his first ones.
1985, I reckon.
That's awesome, mate. That's unreal. So that really kicked off the passion for you.
Yeah, because where I lived, there was no lure munching species. If I had lived on the Murray or something, I was on the South Burnett where we had eels, eel-tailed catfish and dewies. So the first fish I ever caught was a spangly on, I think it was this lure or one very similar to that, like a spangly at Joe Sipple Weir. It was near Berkeley Peterson Dam.
Unreal.
But so I didn't really get a chance to get into the lure making. I had lived at a place like Tenterfield or on the river where I could chase bass or cod or yellows, I would have done a lot more. And
just looking over what you've got there, for that era, remembering, guys, we don't have YouTube back then. Like, these things didn't exist. You couldn't just, at the tip of your fingers, go boom, boom and find out how to twist a wire eyelet, or you literally had to go and buy a magazine, or it was word of mouth. And what I'm looking at there is pretty amazing for that era, mate, and your age.
Yeah, it was just Milo tin bibs and just twisted gal wire, and I think I cut that's how they were doing it, and cutting the groove down the middle and putting the wire through and then gluing it up and bogging it up. So and I'm a bit of a hoarder, so I hang on to most of the stuff. I tried to make dewy lures back in the day. And
that little guy there's got a bit of that Nils Master sort of vibe to it. Unreal. Really, really cool stuff. So moving on from then, you're in your early teens, you're making lures. How long did that go on for until you sort of took it to that next level?
Well, I made a few of them and worked out I couldn't really catch many fish on them. But through high school I got a few spanglies, and then I joined the army straight out of high school. And it wasn't until I was 19, 20, I moved back to Brisbane, I bought a boat and I started fishing Somerset and Berkeley and Madoomba. And that's when I'd made a few others, but I was terrible at it. I was hopeless. But there was guys like the Flick Cobra and Murray Sugden's Blitz Baggers. That was what we started fishing back in the day, back in the Answer comps, Madoomba Bashes. This was all pre-ABT. So ABT kicked off in 99, 2000.
2000, yeah.
So in the 90s, it was all answer comps, line class
comps, weight comps.
Yeah, so they were the go-to for the bass and yellers on those dams. And Mum and Dad were at Mergen still, so Björka Peterson was my home dam and
closest lake,
and Dooma. So I did make a few. I tried to make a few in that style, but I just...
Give them a look over here, mate. They're pretty... Look at that.
They were pretty rough back in the day, and I did and then, so this is... Yeah, actually on army exercises sometimes I had time in the hand sitting around. I made quite a few of these and painted a few of these in the army.
There's some really good shapes in there.
And I made some flathead ones as well, which that was a good little flathead one. So back in the day, I've always liked that shad profile. So yeah, just a few odd ones, but yeah, it was pretty rough. I didn't really get back into it until after the second or third expo. That's when I sort of... Yeah, because I got into the soft plastic boom, started pretty much the same time as ABT. With Starlo and Bushy pushing the squidgies. And then Berkeley got on the back of that, and I was making jig heads, started making nitro jig heads. I was fishing the tournaments back in the day. Yeah, and then I started doing nitro jig heads in 2003.
So let's just dive into a little bit of that with the whole Berkeley tying with that, mate, with the whole design process. How did that transition from you just making some jig heads ending up as we knew them, the Brim Pro, I think they were series as the Berkeley head. So tell us how that transitioned into that.
So I started nitro itself in 2003 and did it full time for 3 years out of a garden shed in the backyard. Yeah,
That's cool.
I had two of my cousins working for me, loading hooks, packaging hooks, and it was just a whole backyard operation. And it got to the stage because the soft plastics were really booming, jiggers were booming. I couldn't keep up, and TT were doing well at the same time as well. And I just got to the stage where I think TT had just set up an overseas factory at the time, and I'm like, I can't compete with these guys. And I had a baby number 2 turned up. So I went, and I need to, if I want to step this up, I've got to go a different way.
Outsource.
And John Bell from Berkeley actually approached me, and I went down and had a meeting with Grumpy at Pure Fishing, and he told me, what the process was, what they do on jig heads, and he said to me, how do you rate my jig heads? And I said, they're about a 3 out of 10, because that's really crap jig heads. And I said, mine are, 9 out of 10. So anyway, I managed to do a deal with him for 3 years as a consultant for Berkeley, and ended up lasting for 12 years. So
that's amazing. So we don't need to dive into figures, obviously, because that's between you and him. But like, what sort of, I'm sure guys out there would be interested, like, was that a system where sort of you sold them, say, essentially the business, or you were on like a royalty thing per jig head, or how did something like that work, mate, back in that era? Because yet again, that's something that hadn't been delved into back then. Yeah,
I certainly wasn't a businessman, and it's taken a long time in business to step up. But I just basically sold nitro, and there were 64 designs of jig heads in the initial sale. So there were a few different ranges there. With a 3-year contract for a set amount, and then I just went on to a basic salary for 3 years with them. So it was, it worked out well at the time. Wasn't a big figure, but looking back at it, and particularly looking back what they did, but what they were able to do with the Nitro brand in 1 year, they were able to basically like 5-fold the sales, because they got the
outreach and the customer base there, essentially, that maybe you didn't have at that time. So it was
they were absolutely it went nuts for a while. But then I did have to change over to all owner, and they didn't have all the hooks that we wanted at the time. So there's a bit of a trade-off, and there was a delay in getting hooks at times. So there's a big logistics exercise changing from doing it yourself to going with them. But so there's a lot of challenges, and you learn a lot of things along the way. But I'm happy with it all. But
and it's all part of your journey to get to sitting in the shed here right now. And while you were there, did you delve into hard bodies with Berkeley at all? Was there a time where they went, hey, we maybe can use some skills, and hey, let's put that to use in some hard body ranges?
It was only right at the end. Because I did vibes, blades, soft vibes, as well as the jig heads and things like Squiddo. And there's quite a few things that went to the US and the UK that we didn't even see here. So it wasn't at the end when I got into timber lures personally. After going to the expo, I started making them, and then I actually designed a full range for them and presented it, and they said, no, we don't want to do it. And that's when I went, well, I'm out. Like, it was about 3 to 6 months after that, I went, right, this is like, because I really found my passion with the timber when I started doing it. Because there's not a great deal of creativity in jig heads. You know, the shape and the...
How can you reinvent the wheel, essentially?
That's it. Like, there's a little bit of the shape, and there's certainly you got to get right with your hook diameter and gape and length and then your keeper size and everything to suit your plastic, all the different applications. You've got to get that right. But there's not a lot of creativity in it. But I really enjoyed, once I got into the timber, the creativity side of it, and
started to flow.
And then I just went, man, it was like a calling for me there. It was like, this is what I got to do. Like,
what sort of era are we talking here, mate? What sort of year frame are we talking there?
So this is 2015. I'll just grab one real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So in the scale of things, these days, like 10 years, 9 years, that's not really a long time, essentially.
Coming up, not 8 years now.
8 years,
so, 2015 I started making a few lures, and then 2016 is when I presented them with some lures. Like, I went and essentially made that IED one. That's a timber one, but it's the same as that. I made it in 3 different sizes, and then I did 3 divers in 3 different sizes. I went and tested them a lot, did a lot of fishing myself, caught a lot of fish, got a metre 17 at Copeton. We had a really good trip where we got a heap of fish on them in one trip, and I presented it to them, and I'm all excited. And then they go, we don't want to go down the cod. And that was when cod was really booming as well.
And I guess from their point of view, obviously they could have committed to something else at the time. It was probably throwing nothing at you personally, to say, but I guess from a business decision, worldwide, well, almost worldwide sort of company, I guess they look at it, the big picture, and they're probably kicking themselves just a little bit, I'd imagine, knowing for that next 4 or 5 years how unbelievable, like you mentioned, that cod fishing was. No, it was, it went really well through that period, and but for me, it's just one of those things, some challenges that come along. Yeah, for sure. Point you in a different direction, and then so I just went, I've got to take the step of doing this myself, and threw myself in the deep end of going back into business, because I knew what it was like when I did nitro at the start. It is really tough. Starting off a small business and with a family and everything. So you've basically answered my next 2 questions there, but we'll dive into it a little bit more. I was going to sort of aim in the direction of, most of us start as a hobby with lures. It's always, hey, I'm going to make a few lures. But you'd sort of already done that prior. You'd done that in your 20s. You'd started that hobby a lot earlier on. So I guess when you've got to 2015, 2016, you don't have to learn all that stuff. A lot of your skills, you'd sort of learnt that stuff, essentially. There was a lot to learn in the timber stuff to change over from the jig heads to this, to the timber stuff, so and especially painting and all that. So it was a whole new challenge, but I had done the business side of it myself before. So, and also Facebook was emerging a lot more at that time, and how to sell lures and being able to sell them direct, and that you're able to easily try something. If it works, you keep going with it. If it doesn't work, you go, oh well, we'll do something different next time. Wasted a couple of years, we'll jump on and do something else. So no, it's just once I think it was one, I made some lures, they caught fish really well, and then I also made some creative ones like the first lot of crays, and people loved them. And then I don't know, I just went, I don't care if I'm gonna find a way to make it a living out of this, because this is what I love doing, and I really enjoyed it. So. And that's perfectly into the next thing we'd spoken about. I was going to talk about, like, some of the challenges you face. You've absolutely highlighted that. Not giving up, sticking to it, and as well as I do, this stuff isn't cheap to set up. Like, you've got machinery that we'll talk about there in a little bit, tools. You do put a lot into it, so you get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm in a rabbit hole here. We're just going to keep pushing, and we're just going to make this work. And like you said, everything, like I said earlier, everything happens for a reason, and boy, aren't you glad that you stuck with it, and look what Barambah's turned into today. I'm happy. 8 years in, I'm sort of, went into production in 2018, and then I've sort of got my wings clipped a little bit, and I went back to timber. Like, I've always had the timber to fall back on and keep going with, and it's sort of gone up in value and collectability or whatever. So this new range of Barambahs I'm going back into, I'm taking a slightly different angle on it now.
and it's just from learning and experience, and hopefully I'm on the right track.
We all learn from our mistakes. That's not even just to do with lures, in life in general, isn't it? You'd make a mistake, and you wouldn't, if you didn't make that mistake to start with, you wouldn't know not to do it again. So that's unfortunately just the funny way the world works. We will just touch briefly on that transition into your molded stuff, if you don't mind. How was that, like, committing to, obviously financially, a hell of a lot of money, and practically living for some part of time in another country that was probably a little bit foreign to you at the time, and setting these things up? How was that transition from sitting in the shed here making lures?
Yeah, it's a big step up, and I kept trying to get ahead enough to invest into molds and things, and I actually couldn't, like, trying to make money out of this, like the time and effort that you put into it. You think, I'll do a batch and I'll get so far ahead, I'll be able to, use that money to invest. But then by the time you pay all your bills, it's gone again. So I end up drawing a business plan and doing a loan. Yeah. So, a sizable loan to work out. I was lucky I had learnt the information through Pure Fishing. I'd been to overseas with them and seen the factories and met the guys and know how it all works. So I was able to get that foot in the door there, and I was able to get prices. I was able to work out, mould prices, unit prices, minimum order quantities, and then work out all the sums. And then, I put in, got a loan, and then essentially worked my ass off for 3 years to try and pay that off.
Paid off.
It's not easy.
No.
That's why, and in the middle of that, like, as I was sort of getting up and going, sort of COVID hit.
Yes.
And COVID did quite well for a lot of the fishing industry.
Yep.
But for the cod market, it didn't.
No. Lot couldn't travel in the state, big market from Queensland, you couldn't get there, essentially. That's a lot of the problem.
Victoria was the most shut down state in the world, and that was my biggest sort of state as well. So,
and let alone what they may have had on your factories as well, like maybe not being able to jump forward. They were obviously heavily impacted as well.
Yeah, no, it didn't affect me because I'd sort of, when I stocked up quite well.
Yep.
So I had the stock to get through that, but it was the sales that were affected because people just couldn't fish in a lot of those areas as much as normal. So, and I guess that's why I'm diversifying with this new range.
For sure.
I was certainly too much down that cod path only. So now I'm certainly learning. And then we had floods all 2021, 2022 as well. So.
And like you said, you've delved into this new range, but you've still kept a couple of those core little cod ranges in there as well. You haven't done totally away with the existing moulded range there. Yep.
No, there's still my best sellers I kept.
Yep.
In the Bidgewong 200 and Baby Bidgewong, they've always been steady sellers. I reinvested in those, a few new colours, changed the packaging to the new logo branding. And they're going well, and also Barra Jiggers have been really consistent the whole time since I started them.
Sure.
They're building with Barra and cod.
Yep.
So
I guess we'll just dive into costing a little bit. I know there's so many naysayers out there, like, how can't he make a heap of money? He sold those in the shops for $60. Like, we won't go dive a heap into figures, but for me, being in the industry for a little while now and being in the shop, we'll break it down for people that I don't think understand. I buy it off you for a price. I've got to make money. Yep. You've got to make money. So then you've got to get that product made. Now, moulds isn't cheap. Now, can you just hold up your lizard there, for instance, mate, to the camera over here? Now, that lizard, what have we got there? I'm not sure if that's exactly the same amount of joints as your production one was. So we'd have got five joints.
5 segments, 285 mil.
So that's a different mould, guys. You correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I know from the moulding side, that's a mould for every joint. Now, I'm not going to go into the pricing, but I know it's not cheap per mould. So to physically set up that.
It's actually one big mould makes that.
Oh, right.
But it's about this long.
Long,
It's a giant mould. Like,
there you
need
go.
a forklift to lift it. Like, it's steel direct injection moulding, ABS plastic. So that's just one big mould, and then there's a separate mould for the bib. So there was a lot of cost in that particular model, and I'm never going to get my money back on that. I've did my money on that one, that's for sure.
If you don't mind, mate, totally up to you, but just for the people, just to do a mould, let alone anything else, what is a mould for, say, something that size worth for you?
Mate, that one is...
And I think that puts it into perspective, guys. That is why lures end up the price they are. And not even the mould, it's your time, it's your effort. You're paying the people in the factory. I think it's so easy for people, especially for timber lure, to look at it and go, there's no way that's worth $35. But you just don't. It's every little part of it. Freight. It's everyone has their little part on it, and they have to make their money on it. So if no one's making money, there's absolutely no point in doing it.
No, certainly really didn't do my figures well on that one. One of the ones I wanted to get into production, I thought, and that was early in the piece as well. Going back, I wouldn't have done that guy, the big 285 Dragon, and I've pulled him out of the range now. Even though I've paid for the mould, just to do a minimum order, just the run to invest. It's another, I've got to invest to get that one done.
Yeah, and
it's going to take me 2 or 3 years to sell that stock. So.
And then you've got probably factory costs, and I'm not sure how all that works. That's another rabbit hole to go down. But it's not cheap. Making lures isn't cheap at the end of the day, and as in this economy now, it's just getting dearer and dearer, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's why essentially I've had to fall back onto timber lures a couple of times. To keep the finances running. And I'm very, very lucky I've got that, and the timber guys have supported me through that time. But certainly the direction I want to go with the new stuff is more the fishing stuff, and that's what I've done. Like some of the other the lures I did, so the Hectic Yabby, I had to pay for 3 separate moulds because I've got the claw mould, which is TPE, the body mould, ABS, and then the bib mould, which is the other plastic, the polycarb. So because I wanted a tougher bib in them. So 3 different moulds to make that lure, and that's why they're a $40 retail lure. Whereas now I can make a B60 and sell it for $22 and have the same profit sort of thing. So it's one mould for one lure. So we're just being a little bit more economical and making something that works. The Yabby worked fine as it was, but it was just a little bit too extravagant.
Just a cost thing at the end of the day. And I guess that leads me into this perfectly. You followed your heart with that. You knew you wanted that lure, and that really shows how passionate you are about lure making. Like, if you'd probably stopped for 5 minutes, really thought about it, and there's probably always that little bit in the back of your brain going, this might not be a good idea, Matt, but you stuck with it, and because you love lures, you went, I need this lure out there. So I think that's a real testament to you and yourself, mate, because it's not, like you said, you've done your backside on that. You're never going to recoup that money on that lure. And here you are, you're still making lures. You could have packed it in, even though now you've really channeled down back into your timber stuff. You easily could have went, you know what, I am never making another lure, but you didn't. You jumped straight back on the horse and got back into it.
I got no choice, mate. My back's against the wall, and I'm just going for it to see this through and see Barambah through. I've got a lot of belief in what I'm able to do, and certainly now that the knowledge and the background and stuff, I just got to keep channeling it and moving forward with it.
And that's the thing, guys. Matt doesn't have another job. Matt doesn't pack shelves at Woolworths on a Wednesday and Thursday night. Like, this is his job. So while for a lot of people watching other lure makers, it is just a hobby and you've got another job, this is 100% Matt's job. So sometimes you've just got to remember, even for myself with my pricing, that's reflected in, because it's not just a hobby. I can't just sell them for $10 at the markets. I have to support my family, you've got to support your family, and you've got people to pay. Like, it's as simple as that. That's why things cost what they cost. Yeah,
that's it. No, you've got to be, if you want to be a lure maker long term, you've also got to be a bit of a businessman as well. So you can't just be a charity.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple little questions off the back of that, but they're actually my guest questions, so we'll dive into those back at the end. But I think that's a really good idea for people of where you've started. You didn't just go one day, hey, I'm going to make a timber lure. You've always had that passion there, and it's something you've always wanted to do. Talking about passion, we're going to jump into something that I'm very excited about. It's the reason I'm actually at your place here right now is an idea that you had a few years back, mate, the Australia Day Lure Awards. Talk us about that one.
Yeah, no, I've always, obviously I love the creative side of lure making, and then, it was coming up to Australia Day a few years ago, and I went, I'm going to do something Aussie, and I did it 1 year, then I did it another year, then I sort of invited a few guys, do you want to do something for Australia Day? And a few guys did it, and then I actually had said, well, I'm going to do an awards for it next year. So it's just to, encourage people to sort of just go that step further, doing something more creative, something with an Aussie theme, and just something cool that they wouldn't normally do, just to try and encourage people to go to that next level of doing something cool and different.
And maybe step out of their comfort zone just that little bit.
That's it. Because every time you do something different, as you know, when you develop a new lure, it takes a little while. If you're going to do a production one of it anyway, it takes a little while to get it right, and then to get all your templates set up and everything. But then just to do a one-off lure, you've got to get it to swim, but it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing in the world, swim action wise. But as long as it's got a cool theme to it and everything, so people end up learning a few new skills in painting or carving or whatever just from doing it, and it's just a fun little thing to do.
And that's exactly the reason I jumped on board a couple of years ago. I was like, flat out doing my production timber lures, you're making 1,000 of the same thing over and over, and when you come up with that idea, it was like, cool, how good is this? I can have a week where I just don't have to worry about it, and you get in the spirit of things for Australia Day and you create something fantastic. And I think every year, like, the bar's just been raised and raised. Like last year, there were some absolutely fantastic entries. Talk us in, obviously it's too late to enter into this year's one. This may even come out after the awards have been drawn, but for next year, tell everyone, how can they get involved, and what's some of the criteria it needs to meet?
So you just got to jump on the Barambah Lures website. There's a section there for the Australia Day Lure Awards. And it runs through the rules. So basically, it's just got to have an Aussie theme, keep it PG rated. It can't weigh more than 250 grams. It's got to have a couple sets of treble hooks on it, and it has to be able to swim. So it has to have some sort of action to it. You can't just make something really cool, but it's not actually a lure. It still has to be a lure. And you can go back in there and you can look at the past years of all the other ideas. We keep it secret up until the event so that it doesn't lose any impact from launching it. So I think we've got 8, maybe 9 entries for this year, which is about similar to last year. Awesome. And there's some amazing entries coming up in it, or you might have seen them already. But if you want to get on board, the biggest thing is, though, you have to get them into me at least a week. It's about 10 days prior to Australia Day, so that I've got time to film it, edit it, put it together, get it to guys to do the voting on it, and then I've got to edit together for Australia Day, because I present on Australia Day for who's the winner of the Australia Day Lure Awards.
So guys, if you might be watching this now and you're like, man, Australia Day is a year away, you can actually let you know your idea now, and you can lock that in.
That's one thing, if you let me know your idea. Did have a double up there 1 year on the lures, so so if you just let me know what you're going to do to make sure it's not double up with someone else.
It doesn't matter if it's been done in previous years, that's fine.
That's fine, just not in that particular year.
Because you might have seen something, guys, and you go, man, that was awesome, but I'm going to try and put my twist on it, or say the croc hunter on the crocodile or something like that. I might want to do something different. So let Matt know your idea, and he can lock you in, and you can guarantee your spot on that lure. All right, we're going to get into some guest questions now. I'm a big podcast fan, and when podcasters have some guests on, they like to ask them the same set of questions. So I've run the questions past by Matt, so we get a few little props out here for us. But the first question is your favourite lure of all time. It doesn't have to be your lure. It can be a moulded lure, it can be a Japanese lure, it can be a lure from the 60s, whatever. What is your favourite lure of all time, mate?
Can I have 2? You
can have 2. We'll let you have 2, because you've been a good guest.
So my favourite lure in the timber lures is a Shane Murphy Viper. I actually absolutely love his style, his shapes, and then his paint jobs as well, from back in the early 90s era. But my favourite fishing lure, which this might surprise some people, is the Berkeley Jollip. So
the old shrimp.
So shrimp in banana prawn. Back in the day when I did a lot of brim comps, I always fished 2-inch shrimp, whether you're deep or shallow, and then same in the Floody Classics now, 3-inch shrimp, banana prawn.
I would actually agree with you 100%. The 2-inch gulp shrimp, I was a peppered prawn man, but that, as far as soft plastics go, that is by far, it's just a bit of a goat, isn't it? They've just, everything ate that thing.
It is. did a lot of brim tournaments back in the day, and yeah, that was it. Whether you're fishing flats or fishing deep water, you just rig it with a different jig head, and it does the job. So, and it was the same the Flatty Classic. I got runner up in the Flatty Classic one year. Every single fish was on the Jollip 3-inch shrimp.
And there you go, guys. That's not bias. This is one of the best lure makers in the country telling us about a soft plastic. So it's been around for a long time. So that's absolutely fantastic. Question 2 is your favourite lure maker of all time, or not necessarily a lure maker, but someone in the industry maybe that's been a huge idol of yours, someone that you've really looked up to over the years?
Well, geez, that's a tough one. I've probably got to go back to Shane again.
Yep.
Because I was in the North Brisbane Club with him back in the 90s when he was making the lures, and he showed me a few things back then, and again recently, or a few years back when I first got into it, he helped me out. So I'd have to say Shane, but I've got to say there's 4 or 5 guys. There's a lot of guys in the industry that will help you out.
Yep.
You know, if you're starting out, and you're showing that you're keen, and you've got a bit of go about you, they'll help you out. Definitely
jump in and help you out, and that leads perfectly into the next question. For some young budding lure makers, I know there's a lot of guys that follow our channel and our lures that I know for a fact they're in their shed whittling lures away on the weekend. One of my customers cut up a ruler. There's a bib, just out there having a crack. What's some stuff, or some key, just say 3 items. You're a young guy, you don't necessarily have to be a young guy, but someone that's going to give it a real good kick in the backside. What's 3, do you think, main things that you need to have, whether it's machinery or a technique, something that you need to get started?
Well, yeah, if you're past that basic level, you need a bandsaw, 100%.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I use that not everyone uses a lot of is a linisher.
Yep.
So I've never been a carver, except for back in these days they were carved and then rubbed on the concrete.
Yep.
That's how basic they were. And talking about basic bibs, they were just Milo tin bibs back in the day. So, but yeah, so your bandsaw, the linisher.
Yep.
And well, it's a different thing, but the Dremel setup is something that obviously that's for the more detailed stuff, but I absolutely love the Dremel. That's my favourite tool, and that's why I've got such a sort of...
We might just put a little cutaway in there from behind here of what exactly Matt's got there. Look, it looks like I'm at the dentist, to be honest. It looks like I'm about to get a tooth cavity ripped out. So the Dremel is probably a really important tool, because if you didn't want to splash out and get a linisher or a sander, you can essentially do it all with your Dremel.
You can do a lot with the Dremel, definitely. A lot of shaping. You can use some quite brutal tools to take a lot of meat off, and then you can dial it down from there.
And to be fair, if you didn't want to have to splash out and get a bandsaw for a lot of things, and you could hand cut out some of your shapes, you can joint lures, you can cut bib slots with a Dremel once you get your hands around it. So it is a really key sort of tool.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
We'll expand on that question a little bit. Painting. I think everyone thinks you need a $1,000 compressor, a $1,000 airbrush, all the U-Butte paints. You don't need that to kick off, do you?
Oh, yeah, no, you don't. But the painting is, I don't know. It does take. It's probably the longest thing to learn and the hardest, because you've got all the different processes. But you can start quite basic. But for me, it was that far back, I forgot.
Yeah. Are they rattle cans, some of those, mate? That would have been
they were a paintbrush.
Paintbrush, well, there you go. That's even...
I didn't have a spray gun, even
rattle can stuff,
cans. Yeah, some of the later ones are spray cans, but these are all paintbrush.
I think it's important to remember, just give it a crack. You're not going to expect it to look like some of this stuff when you first start, and I think it's important that you do start at the bottom and work your way up. You remember where you started, and it's really refreshing to see your progress through the years of where you've grown to.
Yeah, no, you just got to have the passion for it, mate, and you'll find a way.
That's for sure. Yet again, you're good at this. You're leading perfectly into the next questions, mate. This isn't necessarily based around lures, and I've actually pinched this off another podcast, one of their questions. Shout out to the Alpha Blokes. I absolutely love this question every week they ask it. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Not necessarily to lures, but whether it's something to keep your head down, to keep in your business. What's something that you either picked up with someone, or it might be a little phrase, or something that when times got tough you just sort of bogged down to and remembered that? Is there something that...
Oh, mate, I know you got me on the spot a little bit. I think, I don't know if I've got anyone saying, but you just have to stay positive.
Yeah.
You have to talk positive. If you talk down. You've got to be careful of what you think and what you say. So positivity, and say you're going to do something, then you've got to follow through and do it. So I haven't got any great words of wisdom on that.
That's great, mate. That's still...
I listen to a lot of different podcasts and positivity and stuff. And as you can see from the earphones I've got here, if I'm on the Dremel, I've got this on and I'm listening. Well, I used to listen to the radio a lot, but now it's podcasts, and it's a lot of different. Or even I watch a bit of YouTube. Like you're able to do that while you're working away sometimes. So watching and learning the whole time off podcasters and YouTubers, how they do techniques, but also positivity mindset type stuff.
For sure, yeah.
Business learning as well, and just educating yourself the whole time. Like you just got to keep moving forward.
We might just quickly dive into that business. We probably didn't touch on it enough before. If you are a young guy and you want to jump in, and you sort of want to jump in with all feet at once, and you go, hey, I'm going to give this a good crack, it is crucial that you sit down and have a plan. You've got to have an end goal. I did this myself, and I'm sure you've done it yourself, and you probably do it quite regularly. If you don't have an end goal, you lose yourself. You don't know where you're going. You'll get sidetracked. And I just sometimes I don't even I'm talking on a daily basis. I'll come into the shed and not have an end goal of what I need to get done, and I've done 37 laps of the shed before I've worked out where my screwdriver is. Like, have you found, mate, that that's something you have to see a path? You've got to see what's at that end of that tunnel, something to work towards. Yeah,
definitely. No, you've got to have a plan and work towards it. Like quite often, like I'm sort of in a better place now than what I have been in the past. Like there's times before where you just got bills and you're just like, I have to make these lures, and you just shut yourself down, and you're not open to help and information and everything, and you get in a little bit of a dark tunnel, and you just work towards that, and you push a lot of things away that could be helpful for you. So
for sure,
you can get yourself in that position sometimes, but coming through it. You just got to keep on finding ways of doing things and getting them done, but being more open to things, and the more generous you are with your time and information, things come back to you as well. Like
for sure, it's reciprocal in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same with working with customers now when I'm selling lures, like to get to know them and their business and know what they need, what works for them. That's why this range that I'm doing now is a lot more down the track of what people can sell. So I'm getting a lot of really good orders now on these lures, whereas before, when you're trying to do something a little bit outside of the box, you have to, and I guess I went down the track of doing my creative timber lures into production, and it didn't really work because of the cost factor and because it's a little bit niche and a little bit different. So, and
I think when you say, I've got a beautiful cod here in front of me, when you put that in timber, I think a lot of people appreciate it a hell of a lot more too. Like you've literally sat there with that Dremel over there and you've done that. So I think that definitely reflects back into your sales, and of course the prices that you can charge for some of these things, just for the hours that go into it.
Yeah, no, definitely, and things like the expo make a big difference to the timber lure market. Like that was the whole driving factor behind me starting into timber lures was the expo. So, I got to thank Fitzy for that and everything he's done with that, and it's brought out this whole new era of timber lure makers. For the last 9 years he's been doing it now, since the first expo came. A whole lot of new timber lure making has come out of the woodwork, so to speak, and things like the Stray Day Lure Awards on the back of that, and then even like yourself doing the production timber lures is something that had died back in the early 2000s because of soft plastics and injection molded plastic lures. So now that the whole thing's evolving the whole time. It is
going back in a big circle, essentially, hasn't it? It's just sort of gone back, and I see with a lot of my customers, because you and I, we're so much alike in our lures, but as far as the businesses are very different in the fact that you had that sort of core collector sort of thing, and guys that were passionate about it, where when I sort of jumped in and I'm selling $25 lures to kids and dads that are getting them stuck in trees, and it's funny now to see us switch. Like I'm sort of trying to dabble in a little bit of that collector stuff, and you're sort of punching into the production stuff. So I think it is really cool to see how two businesses sort of, and I kicked off the same year as you, were so very different but so very similar at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's, you just got to, keep on
just don't give up.
Doing things and finding a way and finding your way in the business and finding, you've got to make something that people want. So, if you essentially aren't making enough or the right type of product that people want, then there won't be the value in it, or you won't be able to support yourself. So,
for sure,
yeah.
And making timber lures, trying to get your name out there, I refer to a lot of sponsorship. Young guys wanting to get sponsored, don't approach anyone. You do good, you catch big fish, you're a good bloke, you stand behind a good product and you use it, people come to you to sponsor you. And I think timber lures are exactly the same. If you make a good product and you keep making them and you get them out there, still to this day, I haven't actually approached a store. I've had the stores approach me, and because I'm obviously in a lot less stores than yourself, and I'm on a bit smaller scale, I can't keep up that demand. It's pretty refreshing to see all these new stores jumping on handmade timber lures in Australia.
Oh, mate, because I think they know the value of and the time and effort you put into it. That's why there's very few people doing what you do, because it's bloody tough.
And we speak about it every time Matt rings up to talk his business in my store. That's usually a pretty hot topic. You're like, man, I don't know how you keep pumping out the lures, but yet again, I say to people, mine aren't $100, so there's little things that might not be up to your standards, but that's fine because they're two separate products.
Yep. And
that's the path I chose to go down. So I think that's definitely important. Gets back to what we're speaking about. Pick your path, know where you want to go. Hey, I want to make 3 lures a week and I want them to be like some of these lures here in front of me, absolutely pieces of art. Or you know what, I'm going to pump out 50 lures a week. They're going to be a little bit cheaper, maybe not up to the prettiest standards, but they're going to catch fish. You definitely need that path to go down.
Yeah, that's it. Just work out a plan and work backwards from that and
go for it.
Yeah, that's it. No.
Well, we've got one more question before we finish up here. We're going to change a little bit. This question's going to vary just for you with the way your business is set up, Matt. But where do you see, say, the timber lure industry in 10, 15 years' time, given the technologies we spoke a little bit about before off camera? Talk to us a little bit about the technology that you first built and started with to now some of the technologies that are available, and where you see that in another 10 or 15 years.
With the timber lures in particular?
In particular, mate, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you're making production timber lures, if you want to make a living out, you've got to essentially have a copy lathe. So I've got mine here that I made myself back in 2016, I think it was, after looking at a few other lure makers' setups, and I made a bit of welding, a bit of fitting, put it all together to turn the lures up. But over time, I found there's better guys out there can make better machines that can run off bodies quicker and faster and cheaper than I can make them here myself. So I think that production side of things makes a big difference.
And don't feel bad in doing that either. I think that's a really important part. Like, hand carving lures or lineaging lures will always be a big part and a core of Australian timber lures.
Yep.
But like you've mentioned, if you do want to make a business of it, guys, you have to take that next step. It's as simple as that. If you don't take on those new technologies and accept it, look at the live scope thing. That is a huge blow up in the States even, and it's the same thing. Like, there's guys that are adapting that. If you want to take it to the next level, you need to adapt those new technologies. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, 100%. If you want to be in the game, you have to play the game like that. If you want to do production lures, but if you're a timber lure, you can do your production stuff with as much machinery as you can and technology as you can possibly embrace.
Yeah.
You're still doing a timber lure, which is always going to have more value down the track than a plastic lure. But then you can also do the handmade stuff. There's still a market. There's guys still keeping on making timber lures that they can command big figures for, because it's art. So there's different scales in the market, and there's different things. And if you're also you want to make them for yourself and go and fish, that's cool as well.
Yeah.
So one thing though, I probably would encourage, if you are going to do production stuff, try and find your own little, not your own design, but your own style.
Yep,
like,
great
it can
advice.
just be in the paint. There's no point coming out and then just basically copying everyone else's designs. It's not cool.
Run your own race and stick with something that you're happy with. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're first starting out and you want something to work, sure, copy a lure till you get that working, and then you've got to adapt that and change it to be a little bit different, so that you can put your own stamp on it. People can see that that's your lure. Like most timber lures now, you can pick them up and you know who it is even without looking at the name written on it or whatever.
I was just going to say, like, I could give you one of my lures and you could paint it, and most lure makers out there would be able to go, Matt, that's Matt's. Even though you didn't make the body, you've got your painting style, and you've definitely got that real natural with a lot of your snakes, your lizards, your crayfish. Myself, I'm the total opposite. I'm brights. I'm like fluoros, and you can pick. So, like you said, pick your own style and run with it.
Yeah, that's it.
And people will notice you. If it's a good product, you will get noticed. It's as simple as that.
Definitely.
One more thing, I guess, and this has been a fantastic chat, mate. We've been really honest. Thanks, mate. There's things there that some people probably wouldn't be comfortable talking with. So I'm going to bring this one up because I know you'll help me answer this one. People saying because you use a machine, it's not a handmade lure. Like, that's one thing that grinds me on a daily basis. Nothing paints that lure. Nothing sands that lure. Bib slots are cut by your hands. You drill those holes by your hand. You've designed that lure by hand. It's still a handmade lure as far as I'm concerned. What's your views on that one, mate?
Definitely. There's so much work in it. They can't, obviously hand carved is a certain different thing. If people want to push that hand carved thing,
correct,
that's fine. But handmade, you're still doing everything. Like, there's no machine that's ever going to be able to drill your bibs, your wire holes, bib slots, and glue them in. Like, there's so much work, and even like gluing your bibs in and getting them straight, all that sort of stuff. There is so much work in the whole process. And producing, I'll just hold this one up for instance, just producing that body itself, that's really such a small percentage of all the processes, isn't it? Like, even if you were to hand carve that lure, there is far more processes after that than actually the body itself, isn't there? Oh, absolutely. There's a huge amount more work goes to finishing a lure, and I love the timber part of it. That's the easy part.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned.
It's the priming, it's the sealing, it's the twisting your wires, gluing in the wires. I could sit on here for an hour and rattle off every job there is.
Hooks, everything. So, there is so many steps in the process and so much time, and, it's even hard for you to add up. Like, someone asked me how long it takes to make one. I don't know, of everything. Because I hardly ever just make one lure from start to finish.
Yeah, correct.
So by the time you're doing a batch of 50 or like these intricate ones, even these, I do them in batches of 12 normally.
Yep.
And that is like a 3-week job sometimes to get through all the steps of the process, because you might be doing something else as well. So it's hard to put a price on it, and something what people are willing to pay for them, I suppose.
Exactly, and we could sit here and talk for another 3 hours, this podcast, and keep going. There's so much to talk about, but I'll just finish with this one, and it goes off like starting your lure business. With pricing, you can't charge the hours that you put in, unfortunately. Like so many guys, say you're a tradie out there, and this is nothing against, say, a plumber and electrician, you might be charging $88 an hour. If we were to charge even $20 an hour for a lure, no one is going to pay that. So that's why, I guess, on my side, from a deduction point of view, I do such big batches at a time, because I'm cutting costs, I'm saving materials. It's a big batch out to a store. You, for instance, if you, even for what, like the lizards go for big bucks, everyone knows that your lizards aren't a cheap lure, but if you charge, say, even out at $35 an hour for what you put into that, it'd blow out what you charge for them. Yeah,
definitely. No, don't expect to sort of come out rich from timber lure making, I don't know if I'd recommend anyone to try and get into it as a business.
You don't do it to become a millionaire.
No, definitely not.
But like we mentioned, we do it because we absolutely love it and we're passionate about it. And here we are sitting in a hot little tin shed, chatting about lures, mate. We're definitely passionate about it. So, mate, I think we'll wrap it up there. And I'm definitely going to get you back on a later date. There's so much to talk to, and I know everyone watching this is absolutely going to love it. Appreciate you being honest through the chat, mate. Like I said, there was things there that probably some people weren't comfortable to chat about, but yeah, mate, really appreciate you joining us here today.
No worries. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Anytime.
Well, there you have it, guys. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that one. As I mentioned at the beginning, it was going to be a belter, and it absolutely lived up to all of the expectations I had. Really appreciate Matt taking the time out of his day to sit down with me and maybe go out of his comfort zone a little bit and talk about stuff maybe he hasn't talked much about before in the past. So, huge shout out to him. I wish him all the best. He's really punching it out. He's doing an absolutely cracking job, and he's with his Australia Day Lure Awards and everything he does for Australian Timber Lures, he's absolutely doing a great job to promote it and get more people involved in this fantastic hobby, job, sport, pastime, whatever you'd like to call it. So, guys, that wraps up episode 2. Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Do you want to keep seeing these? I've got some more guests lined up already. We're not going to do a guest every week. We're going to just slip a little bit of me here in the messy looking shed, just chatting away. But guys, let me know who you want to talk to. Let me know if you enjoyed that, because I really hope you did, because I tell you, I had an absolutely blast sitting down with Matt Fraser from Barambah Lures. So guys, hit that subscribe, likes, comments. I say it all the time. Do all that stuff. You're helping us out. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to get back into making some lures, making you guys some more content. We'll catch us on episode 3.